everybody, Lewis here with a quick update on what has been happening in Jackson, Mississippi. If you've been watching us often, you know that I spent some time late this summer, early this fall in Jackson, and I've been staying in touch with residents that I met on that trip. I got a text from one of them this weekend to kind of look into some stuff that's been happening recently. I'm sure, as you saw over the holidays, Jackson actually had boil water notices widespread across the city again, covering, starting basically on Christmas Eve and lasting, depending on where you are in the city, for about 2 weeks, which is absolutely abhorrent that they had to deal with this again after dealing with it just earlier in the summer and, all of the other times that this has happened in the city of Jackson with no real help from the state government over decades, and seemingly, a changing cast with a lack of leadership, even at the city level, although it seems like some of the folks there are doing what they can with what they've got. But since the holiday season, boil water notice, unfortunately, there is even more going on. I'm going to read through just an absolute laundry list of boil water notices that have been issued and then rescinded and then issued again and then taken back again over just the last 2 weeks here. It's absolutely insane how many boil water notices they're issuing in a pocket of the city over here, and then it will move to a pocket of the city over here, and then that one will be pulled away, and then a new one will be added, just in a very confusing fashion that definitely has eroded any public trust that was there in the water system, which, I'll be honest, there really wasn't any. But this is just, hitting the nail on the head that people are very distrustful of the system, and really what needs to happen is a full $1 to $2 billion overhaul of the system, and that's currently not being talked about in any serious fashion. So let's start with going over some of these dates here. Don't mind me while I read some of this. I had to go through a whole bunch of PDFs and a very clunky website to kind of get all of this, but we'll start on January 20th. January 20th, boil water notice issued. January 23rd, boil water notice issued in the morning, followed by another boil water notice issued in the afternoon for a different part of the city. January 24th, a new boil water notice issued for another part of the city. Many of these are impacting hundreds of people, collectively thousands of people. January 25th now, 2 different boil water notices have been lifted, but just in specific parts of the city. January 25th, later in the day, a new boil water notice is issued in a different part of the city. January 26th, 1 notice is lifted. January 27th, 1 notice is lifted. But later on January 27th, another boil water notice is issued. You can see how many of these are happening every single day. Again, now later on January 27th, they've issued a lift of another one. Again, later on January 27th, they've lifted another one. So it seems like they're making some progress. However, 3 days later, January 31st, a new boil water notice was issued again for yet another part of the city. February 1st, a notice was lifted. February 3rd, which is the day that I'm recording this, a notice was lifted. However, just now, another boil water notice has been issued on February 3rd. Now, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, roughly 16 notices of boil water notices happening, being lifted all throughout the day, being posted on this website. And I mean, it's great, I guess, that they're publishing them, but if I lived in Jackson, I sure as hell would not be drinking the water anywhere in the city. And I know for a fact that most residents are not. Going and waiting in line for bottled water is still a daily task that most folks that I've talked to and are still going and doing. They're still going to these pickup sites where they're still set up and getting bottled water, because frankly, I mean, how would you feel comfortable drinking this water when different little pockets of the city are randomly having boil water notices? The whole city had a boil water notice and pressure issues. And I will note too, with a lot of these boil water notices, they're pointing to pressure issues as well, which means there's water just spewing out of the system. If you watched any of my reporting over the summer, you will not be surprised that water is spewing out of the system, because you could just, I mean, there were various instances where I saw it myself back then, and then the freezing conditions they had this winter caused more of that to happen, so I'm sure that the problem is only getting worse. again, that's the major update. They have a couple other interesting things going on. I started to look into, if you'll remember over the holidays I covered this, the city of Jackson had been given $600 million from the federal government as part of the $1.7 trillion omnibus bill that passed over the holiday season. I critiqued that because any of the estimates on actually how to fix this problem are anywhere between $1 to $2 billion, not $600 million. In that same bill, $40 billion was sent to Ukraine, but we couldn't fund half of the cost of the Jackson water bill. I mean, even if you did give the money to Ukraine, why not just pay for the whole thing so that a capital city in the United States in the year 2023 has clean drinking water? That's beyond me. That's a whole other discussion. But I recently found an article here. So this is actually a press release from the city of Jackson. I'm just going to read some of it. Mayor Lumumba made a major announcement Thursday that the federal government has committed to sending $600 million, over $500 million, towards repairing the city of Jackson's antiquated water system. That historic funding comes out of the $1.7 trillion federal omnibus bill that was passed in the final days of 2022, and after national recognition of the city's ongoing issues with its main water plant and outdated distribution lines led to extended boil water notices and the loss of water pressure for many residents. Now, I'm going to scroll down here a little bit because I kind of outlined a bit about, how they secured this money and everything. But what glaringly stood out to me in this press conference was that it seems like there is not a plan as to exactly how to use that money right now. Now, you've been having these water issues for years and decades. The fact that there's not a plan of what you would do if you got the money to fix it is insane to me. You've had years and years and years to at least come. It's like, hey, we don't have the money yet, but what is the first thing we're going to do when we get the money? And the second thing and the third thing, so that you can just jump into action right away. Every day that this gets pushed on is another day that this is going to drag on. And realistically, even if they had all the money tomorrow, it would take years to implement the plan that needs to happen. But it seems to me by reading this that there currently isn't a plan, and now this will take even longer because they need to develop the plan before they actually start implementing it. So you can see here the plan moving forward is to abide by the Department of Justice stipulated order, which can be found here. The funding will be managed by the EPA, which maintains a close working relationship with the mayor and the city of Jackson officials. The plan is to make short-term, mid-term, and long-term corrections to the city's water system and is being overseen by a third-party administrator, Ted Henneflin, who will effort to address the 13 infrastructure priorities listed in the order. The mayor has asked Mr. Henneflin to provide a timeline and implementation plan that will let the public see the steps being taken, the expected start and finish of the products, and the impact each project will have on residents. The ultimate goal is to use the resources to deliver residents the dignity of having clean, available, and safe drinking water. The line that stood out to me here was the mayor asked Mr. Henneflin to provide a timeline and implementation plan. Is there not an implementation plan already? Do they just have these are 13 things we need to do and there's no implementation plan? Because if I was in this position, I would be doing everything possible to try to make sure that everything was in place so that it's okay, if we get $100 million, this is exactly what the $100 million is going to be spent on. These are exactly the teams of people we need to go to do this. The fact that they're talking about creating an implementation plan worries me a bit. Hopefully there is more of a plan going on behind the scenes that I am missing, but given the track record of everything that's gone on with this whole issue, I am unfortunately not optimistic. One other update in the city of Jackson does not necessarily pertain directly to the water, but a lot of the other issues in general. And then one other update that I wanted to give, this is beyond the water, but kind of falls into a lot of the other issues going on in Jackson as a whole. When I was there, I covered a lot of just the general infrastructure issues that were going on, but clearly there's a lack of resources in the city in general. This is also the capital city of the state of Mississippi, as we've talked about, and at one point, the city of Jackson was asking for additional resources for its police force. Just like every other department in the city, they're kind of under-resourced and essentially need extra funds to operate. Instead of doing this, what the state is currently doing right now is proposing a bill, House Bill 1020, in the Mississippi State Legislature. And this bill does a couple things, but one of the things that it does is it expands the footprint of the Capitol Police. So in the city of Jackson, you have the City of Jackson Police Department, and then you also have the Capitol Police Department. And the Capitol Police Department generally polices a district that surrounds the state capitol, the governor's mansion, all of the sort of like state offices, kind of in a portion of like the downtown core of Jackson. And then the city of Jackson Police patrols and manages the rest of the city. Now, this is significant that they're trying to extend this footprint for a couple of reasons. Number one, the state government is a very white, conservative body, and the city itself is predominantly black, kind of left-leaning voter base. You now essentially have the state legislature claiming a bigger footprint of the city to take control and essentially police the people that are, frankly, just being abused across the country in this case. We've seen all sorts of police brutality going on across the country. If you've been watching Status Coup, you've seen that John was on the ground covering in Memphis the tragic events that happened there. We've been on this, talking about this sort of thing for a long time. This is just not a good look, and it's terrible what's going on in the city of Jackson. They're also working on appointing their own court in this region that would be appointed by state officials, not local ones. So that's something to keep an eye on. It's currently still in the Mississippi State Legislature, but if this passes, this would be a very big deal. On top of all of the issues with the water going on in the city. I've got more research to do on that, and I'm going to be following along with this bill, so stay tuned, and I will provide an update there. To wrap this up, though, I mean, the fact that they've got dozens of boil water notices turning on and off like a light switch throughout the city is absolutely abhorrent and should not be happening. We'll stay on top of this story. I'm going to still stay in touch with a lot of residents that we met on the ground when Status Coup was there. If you want to support more on-the-ground journalism, Jackson is a place that I would love to go back to bring real updates to you all. Please consider becoming a member, statuscoup.com/join. You can also donate, statuscoup.com/donate if you want to make a bigger one-time donation or something like that. Give me a follow on Twitter, @LewisD217. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a good day.